Tonight on the Daily Debrief, at least a dozen are dead in a mass shooting in California. A Supreme Court justice is injured. Plus, the case of Aaron Hernandez is in the hands of an appeals court. And
he's got a knife.
The state's key witness in a deadly roadside stabbing. That's straight ahead on the Daily Debrief for Thursday, November 8th. And good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Debrief. First tonight, at least a dozen people are dead in a California mass shooting. Police in Ventura County say Marine Corps veteran Ian David Long of Newberry Park, California, killed himself when officers confronted him at the scene. He used a .45 caliber handgun with an extended magazine, the authorities said. Long had been previously examined for mental health issues, but he did not meet the criteria for commitment against his will to a mental hospital. The gunfire rang out just before midnight overnight. One of the victims was a responding police officer. Authorities are unsure about the shooter's motive at this hour. Witness Taylor Whitler told local reporters that the gunman, quote, knew what he was doing by quickly reloading his weapon. In her words, he had perfect form. We will continue to monitor the events for updates. Back to court tonight, where in Florida, defendant Armando Baptista faces manslaughter charges in what's been described as a road rage stabbing. Victim Fakhreddin Knight, who went by the nickname Mohammed, and his girlfriend, Wendy Gimbolas, left a party one night. At a stop sign, a car driven by defendants Armando Baptista and Demetrius Elder would not move. Knight honked his car horn, then got out of his car when the car in front of him didn't move. What happened next is a big he said, she said, but it resulted in Knight being stabbed and killed. Prosecutors originally sought murder charges against both Demetrius Elder and Armando Baptista, but they later downgraded those charges to manslaughter. The jury in the Demetrius Elder trial acquitted Elder of the top charge. Jurors instead convicted Elder of the lesser included charge of culpable negligence. That's a misdemeanor carrying up to 1 year in jail. The victim's girlfriend is the key state's witness this time around again. They believe, the authorities that is, believe her version of the story in full. Here, she testified about coming to the stop sign that fateful night.
Sat there, even though they had plenty of options to move. There were several openings within 2 to 3 minutes. I made the comment, I was like, what the? Because I was a little aggravated. Muhammad was cool, calm, and collected. He goes, hold on. And he tapped the horn.
Give me an idea of how long of it you say tap.
I mean, it's like...
brief, nothing long or extended. How long after that tap before the next thing that you see happen?
He grabs his little solo cup. He says, I'll be right back.
Okay. Tell me how he got out of the car.
Do it.
Tell me how he got out of your car.
He got out like he was going to go see a friend.
Was he throwing the door open?
No, he didn't throw the door open. He wasn't even aggravated.
Next, the prosecutor asked the girlfriend to estimate how close the two cars were at that stop sign.
I would say from the corner of this to maybe right there where that stand is.
Can we approximate that as 6-7 feet?
Is that 6 feet?
I'm asking if that's a fair estimation in your opinion.
Maybe about 3 or 4 feet.
3 or 4 feet. You could still see the brake lights on the car in front of you?
Criminal defense attorney Mike Koribanics is with us tonight on the Daily Debrief. Mike, let's stop this right there. So she's the state's key witness. Don't you think that this issue of how far apart the cars were at the stop sign would have been a very important detail that they would have wanted to have firmed up before this point? Because there's a big difference between 3 feet, which is really crowding someone, and 6 or 7 feet, which is maybe a more respectful distance, perhaps?
I've been watching this trial, and I just am a little bit amazed at the lack of witness preparation. And good prosecutors always prepare their witnesses. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing dishonest about it. But those kind of details you want to have really firmed up before someone takes a stand. And if you're going to have them point out in court, at least have that measurement given some sort of notice to the court.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering she testified in the first trial. This is not a witness who's up on the stand agreeing. She's been through this before. But look, does this affect her credibility, or is the jury just going to gloss over this?
You know, it's very difficult to figure out what a jury will find that's important, because each jury is different in a different composition. But, you know, but when it comes to things where there's a fight, where there's space, time to get away, time to flee, distance is very important.
I agree with that. And also that line that she uttered there, it was like her boyfriend, the victim, was getting up to go meet a friend. Well, if they were afraid of what was going on, or they thought something funny was up, is that the right way to characterize that?
No, that whole part of this story is very difficult to me to put into a practical, real-life situation.
It's a different case. Mike, we'll check in with you again in a second. From that testimony, the victim's girlfriend moved on to describe how Muhammad Knight and the men stopped in front of them, talked, and then how the fight started.
What is Muhammad doing besides talking? What do you see him do?
He's holding his little red Solo cup in his right hand.
Do you see him take any drinks of his red Solo cup? Do you know if he was holding it on the top of the cup?
No, ma'am, in the middle.
In the middle. After they're talking for a little bit, what happens next?
Muhammad switches the Solo cup from his right hand to his left, and he extends his right hand out and downward, and that's when the passenger threw a punch. Now they're up against the car, then they're in the car. The passenger's on his back. The passenger winds up inside, laying on his back. Muhammad's on top of him. I start walking towards the car. The driver gets out, comes walking around the back of the car, looks at me, and yells, "You better come get your man." I go walking up to the car, shaking my head, because at this point I think, you know, they're fighting for no reason.
Did Muhammad have a weapon with him?
No, not at all.
Did you have any weapons in your car?
No, ma'am. And I'm pulling at the back of his shirt. I said, "Baby, come on, we gotta go. We gotta go see Mom."
And what does he say to you at that point?
He turns his head towards the left and he screams, "He's got a knife."
All right, that's how it started. From there, this witness's testimony turned to the bloody stabbing itself.
I was like, "Baby, he got the knife. Come on, let's go."
Are they tussling? Are they still in the seat?
They're still in the seat. I pulled him up.
What did you see?
There was a solid red blood from his chest all the way down to his pants. My first reaction was get him away from these fools. The driver was standing to my left. The passenger was standing to Muhammad's right.
Okay. How did they get out of the car?
When I pulled Muhammad up, I guess the passenger got up with him. I was not paying attention. I was more worried about Muhammad. I grabbed Muhammad's wrist with his left wrist with my right hand. I said, "Come on, baby, let's go." I took 2 steps forward, and that's when they both started kicking and punching him, or what I called wailing on him.
Back to Mike Koribanics now for some analysis on this one. It's very sad to listen to this play out, the way that witness described her boyfriend being victimized, in her words, and ultimately stabbed and killed there at this stop sign. But all of these folks were at the same party together.
Yeah, this is a very unusual and perplexing case, because even the way this sort of develops and unfolds in front of you, it almost seems like the actions aren't consistent with her words. I mean, somebody's getting stabbed, people are talking very articulately about "there's the knife." I mean, it just seems like everybody, it doesn't seem like her recollection really, it seems like it might have been clouded and she's trying to repiece it together, because her words really don't make sense for the situation.
Yeah, and I really did a lot of editing there to try to snip that description up into a short, digestible piece, one could say. But, you know, look, one of the things we learned in the trial this past summer is not only were they at the party together, but there were insinuations that someone was there to enforce some kind of a grudge or dispute, and that there was some fear attached to that. And maybe that's what was behind this incident at stop sign.
Well, it doesn't appear that... See, the way even the cars were, this seemed to be that there was going to be some confrontation because somebody could have left. You know, if he was approaching the car in front of them, they could have took off if they didn't want trouble. It just doesn't make sense.
Somebody could have turned around as well. Okay, so look, still ahead tonight here on the Daily Debrief. We are not finished with the Armando Baptista case. A few key points for the defense during today's testimony. That's after the break. Plus, the Aaron Hernandez murder conviction is before a Massachusetts appeals court, even though the defendant is dead. It all boils down to money, folks. That's after the break here on the Daily Debrief. Welcome back to the Debrief, folks. The highest court in Massachusetts today heard arguments over whether Aaron Hernandez should be declared innocent in the eyes of the law. The former New England Patriots football player was convicted of murder in one case and acquitted of double murder in another. We covered that second case here on the Law&Crime Network. Hernandez hanged himself and died in prison. Under Massachusetts law, Hernandez should be declared innocent under a so-called abatement doctrine, which wipes clean a conviction if a defendant dies before his appeals are exhausted. The state argued today that Hernandez killed himself to protect his estate and his own family from lawsuits which arose from the murder. In essence, that would mean his family keeps all of the money. Some of it would not go to his victim's family under a civil suit. Massachusetts prosecutors want the court to do away with that abatement doctrine in the name of justice. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsberg was hospitalized this morning after breaking 3 ribs in a fall in her office. That fall occurred Wednesday evening in Ginsberg's office. The court said she felt uncomfortable after she went home, so she went to the hospital this morning. Tests there confirmed 3 fractured ribs on her left side. Now, Ginsberg broke 2 ribs in 2012, but didn't even disclose that injury until months later, and indeed she continued with her work schedule. She had also previously been treated for cancer and had a stent inserted in an artery. Ginsberg is 85 and says she plans to serve on the court until she's about 90 years old. Time now for a check on other incidents making headlines. Here is Anthony Velez.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on lawandcrime.com and across the country. The passenger in the vehicle responsible for killing 3 Girl Scouts and a mother in Wisconsin allegedly grabbed the steering wheel and struggled with the driver to maintain control of the vehicle. The driver, 21-year-old Colton True, was arrested after allegedly striking the victims with his pickup truck and fleeing the scene of the deadly accident in Lake Hallie. True later surrendered to authorities and reportedly admitted to huffing chemical vapors before crashing his Ford F-150 into a roadside ditch where the victims were performing a community service project. His passenger and roommate, John Stender Jr., allegedly told authorities he tried to wrestle the wheel away from True to maintain control of the vehicle. True now faces multiple counts, including 4 counts of homicide by negligent operation of a vehicle. A former Ink Master contestant was arrested in Florida after he allegedly assaulted his girlfriend with a safe. 45-year-old Chris Blinston was taken into custody after his girlfriend claimed he assaulted her with a safe during an argument regarding paperwork about their 3 children. Blinston, who appeared on season 6 of the Spike reality television series, denied any wrongdoing. Blinston now faces a battery charge. A woman in Michigan is facing criminal charges after she was caught on surveillance cameras backing her car into a liquor store last month, seriously injuring a customer. 38-year-old Samantha Baxter was arrested after she drove her car into Blue Bird's packaged liquor in Muskegon Heights last month. The customer seen on camera being hit by Baxter's vehicle allegedly suffered a broken hip and fractured leg. Baxter now faces charges of operating while impaired and causing serious injury. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for the Daily Debrief.
Back now, folks, to the Armando Baptista trial. One key point for the defense is the presence of a beer bottle at the crime scene. The defendant said he was struck with it, and that's part of the reason why he fought back. The victim's girlfriend said nothing about it. The defense asked the police many questions about how it was tested for DNA, fingerprints, and the presence of blood.
You swab the inside and the outside of the spout.
Yes.
Correct? Right where somebody would drink from the bottle.
Correct.
All right, and so when you, basically it's like a glorified Q-tip that you rub around the spout. That Q-tip goes into an envelope and goes off to a lab somewhere, correct? Okay. You're not involved in whatever happens with that next?
No.
Correct? Okay. And so you actually observed a latent fingerprint on the spout of the beer bottle, correct?
I believe so.
So you sign it out on the 20th, and then on the 21st you take it to the Broward Sheriff's Office. Broward Sheriff's Office has the crime lab to analyze fingerprints, correct?
Yes.
The fingerprint itself, the latent fingerprint itself, is still on there, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Do you believe so, or do you know?
I took it there for them because they had the equipment to properly extract it, to make sure it's good. So I brought everything there to them. I saw white, what looked like fingerprints. So the best method was to bring it to BSO because they have better equipment than I do. I asked them to process it for me. He had the equipment. They took care of it. I know he wrote a report on it, so I don't know what they got.
Did you ever see any picture or any lifted latent from the print?
I did not.
Okay, so whose print was it on the beer bottle? That's the question. A crime scene tech testified that she did not perform luminol testing for the presence of blood near that beer bottle.
Are you familiar with luminol testing?
Yes.
What is luminol?
Basically, it will highlight blood, presence of blood.
Okay, so if you swab an item and then treat it with this liquid substance, luminol, if it highlights, then that's an indication that there's blood there. Is that correct?
Correct.
The stains on the ground, right where the beer bottle and the hat are found, did you swab those at all to check for luminol?
I did not. But we do have a test, a presumptive test that we can do.
Okay, did you do that?
I did not do that.
So as you sit here now, I know you indicated on direct that it didn't appear to be blood to you. You didn't do any testing to confirm that. Is that correct?
No, I did not.
The very first witness on the stand in this case was this police officer who described arriving at the chaotic scene.
I observed a large crowd of people scattered, and I also observed the victim laying on the ground on the swale. It was grass. There was an individual applying pressure to his chest using a white towel. I immediately started rendering aid. I used the same towel that that individual was using, and I applied pressure, and I immediately called for rescue to step it up. I asked him, if he could tell me a suspect description, any vehicle description, that sort of thing, so I can put it out on the radio for other officers to be on the lookout. But he wasn't talking. He was, in shock. He was gasping for oxygen. The towel had blood on it. He had a white shirt which was, drenched in blood, and it was sipping through the shirt.
Up next in this case, a detective who spoke with the victim's girlfriend. Remember, we heard from her earlier, and the state's case is based largely on that girlfriend's statements. This is cross-examination of the detective.
Am I correct that at no point did she ever tell you that the passenger walked towards her, towards Mr. Knight?
She told me that he exited the vehicle and a fight ensued.
That Mr. Knight exited the vehicle, correct?
No. Yeah, the deceased approached the car. He said he got out. He said, "Wait here," something to that effect. He approached the vehicle with the two alleged in the car, and they had a minute chat, and then the passenger exited the vehicle and a fight ensued.
Okay. She never told you that the passenger walked towards Mr. Knight, is that correct?
No, correct.
Right. She never told you that Mr. Knight tried to shake the passenger's hand, is that correct?
I don't recall anything about that, no.
She never told you anything about Mr. Knight having a red Solo cup, is that correct?
No.
She never told you anything. Did she ever tell you how it was that Mr. Knight ended up on top of the passenger inside the passenger seat?
She did tell me that happened.
She told you that happened?
Yes.
That Mr. Knight was on top of the passenger in the passenger seat?
Yes.
Did she ever tell you how that happened?
They were fighting, and it wound up that way. That was my understanding.
Okay, but she didn't give you any details as to the mechanism of how Mr. Knight ends up in the passenger seat, correct?
No.
Back now to Mike Koribanics. He's a criminal defense attorney to offer a few more bits of analysis about this case. So Mike, listen, we had this detective characterizing the initial conversations with the girlfriend. The girlfriend is the key witness, and she's describing this as a friendly handshake at this random stop sign in this random neighborhood where these two vehicles wind up after they left this party where everybody was together, and apparently somebody was looking to settle a grudge against somebody else. And it seems that what that girlfriend told that detective is a little bit different from what the girlfriend ultimately testified to in court today.
Well, that's always the danger of when you have a witness who's in an excitable event. You really need to know who's coming on to corroborate how they're going to corroborate their stories. And it appears this is not a very good witness for the state.
What did you make of some of the cross-examination there from the defense? They're really getting at this beer bottle. You know, was it tested for blood? What happened with the testing of the print? How did the custody of that bottle move from the local police to the sheriff's department and whatnot? They really needed to drill into that. We don't know all of the conclusions yet because we don't have all the crime lab testimony, but the defense was really needling at that point. And I'm wondering if the testing was inconclusive and the defense is going to turn around and say, maybe he was hit with that beer bottle. Maybe the defendant was attacked and they just don't have the evidence to say that he wasn't.
I agree with you. I think the defense knows where it's going to go and it's going to be in their favor, because if that's their defense and the state did nothing to prove it, it shows they were lax in their investigation, and this jury can't find beyond a reasonable doubt.
I didn't listen to every split second of that girlfriend's testimony, but she's talking about this Solo cup, you know, just like a plastic cup. She's not talking about this beer bottle. She doesn't seem to indicate that that the victim in any way attacked the defendant, but the defendant has a very different side of the story. The defense said this is a self-defense case. We haven't heard any of that theme out of the prosecution's case.
Well, it's interesting because she just ignores that fact. And the fact that she makes this red Solo cup an issue, you wonder if she's not deflecting from that beer bottle, and it's not a lot more important to the defense.
One has to wonder. Mike Koribanics, criminal defense attorney, always appreciate your insight.
Always great to be here. Thank you, Aaron.
All right, that's all the time we have for today on the Daily Debrief. A reminder, of course, that the Law&Crime Network will be streaming the Armando Baptista case beginning tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a good evening, everybody. We will see you back here tomorrow on the Daily Debrief.